The courtroom buzzed with tension as Karoline Leavitt, young and fearless, stood facing one of the highest judges in the land, Coney Barrett. The charges laid against Leavitt were serious, carrying the threat of jail time if things went badly. Dressed in a simple navy suit, Karoline looked calm, almost unnervingly so. Judge Barrett, known for her sharp legal mind and no-nonsense attitude, had every intention of making an example out of her. Many thought Leavitt, despite her political skills, had finally gotten herself into a situation too big to handle. The stage was set for what seemed like an inevitable downfall. From the first moment proceedings began, Leavitt showed she was not there to be a passive participant. When the prosecution presented its first pieces of evidence, Karoline listened attentively, occasionally jotting down notes. Her eyes never wavered, her focus razor-sharp. Judge Barrett occasionally glanced over, expecting to see nerves or cracks in the young woman's composure, but found none. The courtroom filled with an eerie sense that something unexpected was brewing behind Leavitt's calm exterior. Every reporter in the room could feel that this was not going to be a normal trial. As the prosecutor wrapped up a particularly strong accusation, Judge Barrett asked Leavitt if she wished to respond. Instead of deferring to her lawyer, Karoline rose to her feet. Speaking clearly and respectfully, she challenged the very foundation of the prosecution's claims. She cited obscure case law, constitutional protections, and precedent from rulings that most judges would need time to research. The room sat stunned as she weaved a tight, intricate argument that dismantled much of the state's case in less than 5 minutes, leaving the lead prosecutor visibly rattled. Judge Barrett leaned forward, intrigued despite herself. She peppered Karoline with rapid-fire questions, expecting the young defendant to falter under pressure. Instead, Leavitt countered each question with precise legal logic, drawing from historical rulings, Supreme Court interpretations, and even quoting Barrett's own previous writings back to her. It was clear that Karoline had prepared not just to defend herself, but to engage at the highest intellectual level. Murmurs spread through the courtroom as observers began to realize that this was no ordinary defendant standing before them. Every time the judge attempted to corner her into admitting fault, Karoline turned the questions back around, exposing gaps in the prosecution's case or highlighting procedural missteps. At one point, when Barrett asked her about the applicability of a federal statute, Karoline smiled slightly and recited the statute word for word, then explained why it did not apply under the specific circumstances of her case. It was the kind of performance that law professors dream of seeing from their students, and here was Leavitt delivering it under the most intense pressure imaginable. The prosecution tried to recover, calling witnesses and presenting additional documents, but Karoline was ready for each move. She challenged the credibility of witnesses with well-researched counter-evidence and cross-examined with surgical precision. The judge watched intently, her earlier belief that this would be an easy proceeding beginning to crack. What started as an attempt to make an example of Leavitt had turned into a masterclass in courtroom strategy and constitutional defense. Even seasoned legal veterans in the audience were whispering about Leavitt's performance. After hours of back and forth, Judge Barrett called a recess, visibly needing time to rethink the situation. She disappeared into her chambers, and the courtroom buzzed with the realization that Karoline Leavitt had just outmaneuvered some of the sharpest legal minds assembled against her. News outlets scrambled to update their headlines, shifting from Leavitt faces certain jail time to Leavitt stuns courtroom with legal brilliance. Even her political rivals, many of whom secretly rooted for her downfall, couldn't help but marvel at the spectacle they were witnessing. When court resumed, Judge Barrett returned, her demeanor slightly different, more respectful, less combative. She asked Karoline to make a closing statement, giving her the opportunity to tie her case together. Karoline delivered a passionate yet intellectually grounded summary of her defense, speaking about the importance of justice, constitutional integrity, and standing firm even when the odds are stacked against you. She didn't just argue law, she argued principles, weaving logic with emotion in a way that left an indelible mark on everyone who heard her. Judge Barrett took a long pause before rendering her decision. Finally, she announced that all charges against Karoline Leavitt were dismissed. The courtroom erupted, some in shock, others in applause. Barrett acknowledged, with rare openness, that Leavitt's defense had not only exposed fatal flaws in the case but also reminded everyone in the room of the true spirit of the law. It was an extraordinary admission from a Supreme Court justice, and it cemented Leavitt's reputation not just as a fierce political voice, but as a genuine legal powerhouse. In the days following the trial, Karoline Leavitt's star rose higher than ever. Legal scholars dissected her arguments in journals and podcasts. Her supporters hailed her as a defender of liberty and justice. Even critics had to concede her brilliance, grudgingly admitting that few could have pulled off what she had achieved. Judge Coney Barrett, for her part, made no secret of her respect for Leavitt's intellect, calling her one of the most formidable minds to enter my courtroom. Karoline had turned a near certain defeat into an unforgettable victory.